Alright everyone, Supreme Kami over here. So coming back for the second half of the alteration review for this round of the double Sky Moebius over here. And man, I think the first question I want to answer right out the bat is if anyone is asking which of the two banner is definitely the best one to summon on, I would, I don't know. This is definitely the hardest one to pick from because this week around we're getting two new you can say shooter based unit over here, and one being a big scale, and you can't like I cannot say no to a big scale, right? Because what it's offering like in terms of team construction, it's gonna outshine the double Sky Moebius by a landslide just because of that non-conditional 20% boosting, which you cannot get from a regular scale. So in that perspective, it will definitely win. But in terms of the Moebius, having a commander tech definitely helps out in trying to build that perfect, not really perfect, that optimal shot-based unit. So it's really hard, right? I guess the best way to kind of go around for this week, for example, if you guys do have any horrors, for example, and don't mind going to a few multi-summons, I would say the step up is probably the only one to really go into. I would not say any of these four are anything out of the norm, maybe except the chest for the double sky, because we don't really have any of the 40% trait variant chests anywhere before, so that's probably the part that kind of eyeballing. But all the other part are just kind of like not really rehash, but we have already seen them already, and they're not. I would say, oh, you gotta go for them, for example, right? So maybe I feel like 70 for one part out of 10 part selection is just too much. Trying to eyeball for a specific part is definitely going to be a lot more harder if you're looking at a roster of 10 parts in combination. So what you want to be doing, just I would say skip this week, for example, right? Because we do know that Ballad is going to be coming out in terms of the actual anime. It's going to start airing next week on the 19th. So whenever they decide to drop the Borbedo Tauros or even the Commando Quanta is up in the air so far, I would have to say it might come in by the end of the month or even early next month in November, right? So I think those are probably going to be highly anticipated unit. So if you guys want to save up for those, definitely go for that. But but let's actually go in, right? In terms of stat for any of these new unit, we can just always see that they are going to be well within the top 10 at least listing. And then I am also going to be providing like the top 30, from 1 to 30. What are like what are we looking at, right? That also going to give you guys a visual of like how much of a difference we can be looking at, what kind of variant are we looking at from, let's say, from like number 30th to like ranking 1, like how is the range, right? So there's definitely going to be some things you guys will see and all that good stuff. So let's actually hop into the head real quick and see what we're looking at. In terms of the head, war type combo is same as the Helios, which I don't really like that kind of combo because like in today's meta, for example, you would like running high firepower and Gundam type together is not really the most essential. For example, it's definitely becoming of like either running either or, and then having commander, for example. Or if you guys are not running commander, it's maybe you guys are running, let's say, mid range or long range. I would say that mid range with the introduction of the big scale freedom is definitely going to be a lot more accessible to getting a higher stat than before. So that is definitely another plus for that, for that the other spectrum compared to this one over here. So it is really an unfair scaling or even comparison, I would have to say, in that regards. But in terms of the head part over here, the Moebius is looking at 11,801, so it's definitely really top notch for sure. But let's do see if the portrait does justify for that. It actually does not. This is unfortunately it's gonna be one of those when you shoot down one enemy, cooldown reduced by 60%, and whopping 60% is probably the highest we've seen so far. And in terms of my view on these, 45% on base. Wow, that's actually pretty sick for sure. We don't really usually see that much on like a base level 1, so this one is definitely gonna be good if you combine that with a few different other ones. But I think my takes on these over here are just really situational depending what kind of like events you guys looking at. Definitely is good, but once you shoot like all right, let's say for example, you guys are fighting like last week we had the hash mode, for example. Since there is only going to be one enemy, so you would never activate this kind of word tag or that portrait. So I guess in the general consensus it's more like this portrait is kind of useless where you guys are taking on let's say one enemy only, that's just kind of a bummer, right? Or even if you say, oh, let me take this onto like a regular multi mission, for example. I'm pretty sure after you take down that first enemy, or let's say, or even that, let's say your other ally, your other live ally, right? Take down one enemy. This I believe that immediately proctors it. So whatever EX skill you have already, for example, you have good initial cooldown already, that basically just kills this portrait and reduces to nothing. So that's why I don't really have a good relation to these kind of portrait. I think they're just outright not good, for example. But definitely there are some, in some spot that is gonna be good, But it's just in my opinion, they're not. These kind of portrait are not the most ideal, in a way. But definitely good, but not optimal, right? In terms of the torso, like I said again, the torso is definitely going to be the part for this week. Or in terms of the set for the Moebius, definitely to eyeballing it, because this one is actually going to be giving out a 40% trait for the chest. So this is actually pretty good. In terms of stat wise, this is definitely going to be the best, shot based chest so far coming out. Like look at the shot attack and then both the defenses. Like they're both ranking at 5,000, which is extremely good. And then you guys also take a look at the armor is extremely high. So whenever let's say the armor mode arena comes back around, this part can potentially be a good option as well. But in terms of the portrait, I would have to say just a little bit of a knocks on that. It's actually going to be that first portrait condition. Locking this specifically to a middle shader can be a problem. For example, if you cannot muster that in terms of whatever your build is looking at, so this portrait would definitely not going to be a good option if your build does not consist of, let's say, mid-range. So that is probably the only thing I want to knock on that. But other than that, having that 40% trade is definitely going to be a part that will last, I would say, a pretty good while, right? I don't really foresee them, they'll definitely release more 40% trade later on throughout the years. But I don't really foresee them being a power grab, for the time being. So if you guys did actually put a chest, this is definitely a good pickup for sure. Not bad, like to archery and all that. Moving on to the arm over here, I think, wait, does this one have commander, right? Yeah, the only thing I forgot to mention, this actually does have a really good combo over there. High firepower and commander is probably the first time I've seen that. I don't think I have ever experienced seeing that, right? But in terms of the arm, it's going to be the same word tag again, which is a really, really, really good combo. Definitely like that for sure. In terms of the arm, it's going to be ranking it in place number 3 so far in terms of the shot department over here, so not bad. The only downside of that we're not going to be seeing is going to be some resistance so far, but I don't even with, let's say, a really medium range for both resistant. I don't really see too much of a benefit of having that anyways, but it's just for I don't know, it just I don't really never really see too much of an impact on that, for example. But in terms of the arm portrait, let's see what we're rocking over here. Oh, it's gonna be one of these, huh? So this arm is literally the same as, let's say, the Freedom itself. So and then the question is, do you guys want to alternate this arm right here? I think this question is like, do you guys select portrait, or are you guys using portrait that does, melee power reduction like this one is doing? Because this arm portrait is more of like for a tank build, for example. It's not really for like an offensive build, not for like, it's not gonna be like a powerhouse. But the stat definitely justify for that, and I feel like this one is definitely gonna be a hot choice for picking up. Just because you do have commander and high firepower. The worst case scenario, you guys can definitely do some sub slot, potentially getting a better portrait. But if you guys are gonna sub slot, I don't think there's like, in terms of like top choices so far for me. Just look at it. You could be using, let's say, what is that name, the hot scramble arm, but it's just unfortunate that it's not going to be sharing any word tags. So you're just going to be left with only 0.5% subslot on base. So that is not going to be a good scenario, for example. It's just unfortunate, right? So yeah, but in terms of the stat for this one, it's definitely worth it to kind of archery. But just the portrait so kind of makes you want to like, not really regret, but not really worth it if you guys are not really like into those, let's say, enemy reduction type build. So that's gonna be it. Definitely high stat. So definitely it's gonna be worth it for the stat alone. But you guys, in terms of the sub slot, please make sure to find some good sub slot that will potentially give you good portrait, for example. So in terms of the leg-wise over here, we have seen the same EX skill in terms of the double sky hide and sky face. So it's just literally kicking a soccer ball, which is like probably funny, I guess. But in terms of the leg so far, no, I believe Riku actually does play soccer, right? He does. I remember there's an episode like at the very beginning, or like probably the first few episodes. He was actually in his soccer team, so I'm like, huh, I guess, quite surprised they actually did that. And what's more surprising is that the fact that they actually give this unit a commander is quite interesting, right? I never thought Riku could be like a commander. I don't know, it's just quite odd to me. But in terms of EXQ over here, it's just literally kicking a soccer ball, which is a pretty. I would say it does have a long projectile to that. Would you even need to alterate it? If it's purely not for the stat, I would say no, right? Yeah, you would have to alterate it in order to get the maximum power, because you're looking only at D power, which is not enough in today's meta, for example, or just in general. I don't ever think D power EXQ is ever too good, for example. So if you guys do want the Skylake guards over here, you would definitely have to alterate it. But in terms of the stat, it's not looking that bad either. Like, you have some extremely hard armor as well. That is definitely something to note for sure. And then in terms of the melee defense, that is extremely high. The only, I guess, the only sad part we are seeing from this guy over here, or this person specifically, is actually that shot defense being a little bit relatively low than what I have anticipated, I guess. But this one is definitely going to be a good part for subs or the stat staking, for example. Please make sure when you guys are using this leg that you guys would need to, let's say, give it a good portrait, for example. That is going to be a must-have, right? Because you would never want to run into a situation. You will have, this main part being an EXQ, and then sub slot also having an EXQ. If you guys have that situation, you guys better find something else, because that should not happen, because like you're not really getting any power boosting out of any of your EXQ or no, excuse me, your portrait, right? So it is really important not to do that. Always sub slot. If you guys are gonna sub slot, have one, maybe one has a portrait, one has EXQ, that's good, but never on a situation of double EXQ, main part and sub slot having an EXQ. So that's the stat. Moving on to the backpack right here, the backpack does continue to shine. It's really high, offensive value right there. So that's actually pretty good. But I do see some pretty incredible high melee defense as well. So I don't know, why does it have that? It is unfortunate, even though you do have some insanely high melee defense, that's not really going to compare too much if you guys are looking at that melee defense being extremely low. But that armor is going to be continue to trend up at, like, it's decently high for sure. That is for sure. And then in terms of the word tag, is actually pretty doable as well. Just unfortunate that they're not rolling out any more of those commander tag with. If the backpack does have commander, for example, ooh, that's gonna be real nice. That's gonna make it a lot more better. But in terms of EXQ, it's gonna be the high mad full burst mode over here. So this is definitely something I wanted to see. Even on the actual banner image, it was doing like the actual post of firing up those speed, which is a complete ripped off from the Discipline of Freedom. It is quite funny how they managed to put both units that will do a full burst mode together on the same week. And in terms of the animation wise, it's like I don't know. I guess it's a lot more better than the Freedom. It's just that they added like the little extra gimmick where it raises against and all that. So that was quite a touching moment, I guess, if you will. Just because of the fact that they added that little extra detail. But in terms of the EX skill for this one over here, it's not gonna give you like a health recovery like the Freedom Backpack will do, but this one does actually gonna give you 49% shot attack up to your overall squad max, and also gonna increase your running capacity up your squad by 25%. I never see too much of a benefit of having, let's say, what of these running capacity increases with there. Like, I never really see a point of having that, but this one offering it is a plus, I guess. I can't really complain too much about that for sure. Star Wars is definitely top notch for sure. Again, all right. So now we have completely, kind of gone over like the first five parts already. And now we're going straight to the meat over here. In terms of the beam saber, I think the beam saber is definitely a one to pick up for sure. Not on like look at this. On base, you're getting a 15% on your what is that? Your ESQ like initial like first time using it. That's great actually. It's just unfortunate. One critique right here is definitely going to be locking his arm to, or the beam saber, excuse me, to only a middle shoot over here, which is, I I would have to say it's not the worst case scenario, right? It's definitely doable, for example. But if you have, let's say, other parts that wants a long shooter, that is going to be a big problem. But this one having a condition of like 15% is actually really good. So this one's definitely a good beam saber to be picking up, for example, if you guys do so choose to. Extremely high melee defense as well, so that is something we don't see on a daily basis as well. Get armor wise as well, so this is really nice. So not bad. In terms of the dual saber wise over here, this is only going to be a EX skill, a beam rush over here, so not really too much of an exciting, the factor to talk about over here. Word check wise is going to be high firepower and Gundam type, so it's not. I don't know why they were doing this combo right there. Just kind of like this one is definitely better than the beam saber. Is definitely a lot more better. That's for sure. Yeah, alright. So when I did summons for this guy, or no, not this one. When I did summon for the Freedom Banner, I kept getting the Beam Saber. I'm like, oh, no, I don't like the regular Beam Saber, like the Saber category one, not the dual blade one. I'm like, stop giving me the Beam Saber, man. Like if it was this one instead, I'll definitely take all the Beam Saber that I can, because I think at the end of the day for the Freedom one, probably got 6 Beam Saber. Yeah, that was quite sad. Yeah, that's why if I would like if I would have, let's say, maybe 6 like portrait level 6, this would be well within like portrait like 20% already. That's how good having like a jump like that already. So this one, if you guys do ever put a beam saber, this is definitely an excellent part for now to alterate. In terms of, let's say, going over to the last 3 parts over here, it's going to be the ranged weaponry over here. I would have to say the best one is definitely the one I pulled so far, because you guys take a look. The stat for these one are definitely going to be the same across the board for all 3 of them. You have better vortex set already, and even the portrait is definitely the better version of it. But I would have to say the unfortunate part, or you can say the downside, is the locking this one to specifically a high firepower. So if you guys are not running high firepower for your build, for example, this is not going to activate at all. And then the second portrait is only wanting you to use a beam. So this is, yeah, for shot build space, I do see a lot more of this condition than, let's say, melee centric. So it is pretty clear to me that in a shooting based build over here is definitely to run, let's say, any weaponry that's beam. So that is, I guess more or less like the general consensus of trying to match these kind of vortex or portrait wise over here. This is definitely the best one out of the 3 sets over here. This one is a little bit more mediocre, but this one does actually have commander. But I would say that the portrait for this one is definitely going to be more in line of like a let's say like a cooldown reduction build wise over here. And then the second, and then, or did I say cooldown reduction build? Excuse me, I meant enemy power reduction. That's it. But in terms of the second portrait, probably not the best as well. So it's only when your armor is 80% or more, and after that you will not get that E skill power boosting. So although it does have commander, but I will have to say that due to the portrait wise over here, I would say it's not like the most welcomed. But if you guys do like the portrait, for example, definitely do want to get into the likes of, let's say, some cooldown, or let's say enemy reduction type. This is definitely a not bad of an option to begin with, right? Because I believe the arm actually does have that, so you guys are kind of like two parts down already for like a cooldown reduction build, or not cooldown reduction, like power reduction build. So it's not bad overall, but probably the worst one to be looking at is definitely gonna be this one. It's not bad, but this one having a restriction, only the back part is kind of worse than, let's say, um, the first training robots we're looking at. Even the Vortex is probably a lot more harder to work around for this one specifically. So I would have to say, if you guys are taking a look into it, this one over here, this one's definitely the best one to be looking at. But that is gonna be pretty much it for this alteration review over here. So I would definitely say out of the set, definitely the torso, and then maybe the beam saber, and then the first training rival. They definitely caught my eyes for sure. While the other one are just kind of like lackluster, for example. I think they're purely more for like a stat sticker, for example, but not to leave out, let's say, the backpack EX skill. This is definitely pretty cool of how they can animate that, so I'll definitely take that for sure. But those are just gonna be my recommendation in terms of looking at which one is the best, definitely the better option so far. But it has to be the backpack, beam saber, and then the first three rivals, and then other than that, that is gonna be pretty much it. So with that being said, I'll catch you guys all on the next one.